The myth of food morality. We've all heard it. Carbs are bad, sugar is evil, and if you eat clean, you're virtuous. It's everywhere. Diet books, social media, conversations at the gym. But is this actually helping us? Or is it making us more obsessed with food? Welcome to Food on the Mind, Awaken Genius, where we break free from food obsession, unlock our potential, and build a life worth living. I'm Jeb Stuart Johnston, and here we dig into the psychology, philosophy, and strategy behind lasting change. Because transformation isn't just about what's on your plate, it's about what's on your mind. So, food morality. Think about it. How many times have you eaten something and immediately thought, I was bad, or I shouldn't have done that? That reaction isn't about food itself. It's about the meaning we've assigned to it. The idea that certain foods are morally superior while others are shameful indulgences. But here's the real problem. This black and white thinking doesn't make us healthier. It just makes us feel like failures. It turns food into a battle where every bite is a test of willpower, and when we inevitably fail by eating something we've labeled as bad, well, what happens? Guilt, shame, the fuck it mentality that leads to overeating, binging, and a cycle of restriction and rebellion. This isn't just an individual struggle, it's a system. Right? The wellness industry thrives on making you afraid of food. If you believe that eating a cookie, a simple cookie, will ruin your progress, you're more likely to buy the next program, the next cleanse, the next restrictive plan that promises to fix the problem. But the real problem isn't the food. It's the belief system around it. So today we're going to break down why labeling foods as good or bad fuels emotional eating and creates an unhealthy relationship with food. And more importantly, we're going to talk about how to reframe this thinking so that you can finally find peace with food without guilt, without fear, and without the mental tug of war. If this is something you struggled with, stick around. By the end of this episode, I promise you'll have a new way to look at food and maybe even a little more compassion for yourself in the process. So let's start with where this all comes from. Why do we see food in such extreme terms? The idea of good and bad foods isn't something we're born with, it's learned. From the time we're kids, we're told things like, eat your vegetables and you'll get dessert, or too much sugar will rot your teeth. And while there's truth in the idea that some foods support our health more than others, the problem is how these messages get internalized. So let's talk about the influence of diet culture. Diet culture is one of the biggest drivers of black and white thinking around food. It's a system that moralizes thinness, equates health with weight, and promotes restriction as a virtue. From the time we're young, we're exposed to messaging that tells us certain foods are clean while others are junk. The multi-billion-dollar wellness industry thrives on these narratives because they create a sense of failure, and failure is profitable. If you believe that eating the wrong food makes you unhealthy or unworthy, you're more likely to chase the next cleanse, the next detox, the next restrictive meal plan that promises salvation. One of the most insidious parts of the diet culture is its ability to disguise itself, almost as being health consciousness. It's no longer just about losing weight, it's about being optimized, pure, or disciplined. The rules keep changing, but the underlying message remains the same. If you eat the right way, you're good. If you don't, you're bad. And this brings us to the role of personal upbringing, right? Many of us absorb rigid food rules from our families long before we ever engage with diet culture directly. Think about the dinner table dynamics you grew up with. Were you taught to finish your plate even if you weren't hungry? Were certain foods labeled as special treats reserved only for good behavior? Did you watch the adults in your life demonize foods, go on diets, or talk about their bodies in ways that made you believe thinness was synonymous with success? For many, food wasn't just about nutrition. It was about control. Parents often unintentionally pass down their own struggles with food and body image to their children. Maybe you had a parent who was always on a diet, or one who warned you against gaining weight. These messages can create deep-seated anxieties around food, shaping not only what we eat, but how we feel ourselves when we eat it. And let's not forget the emotional role food played in our upbringing. For some, food was comfort, a reward, a rare luxury. For others, it was a battleground, a source of restriction, or even punishment. The way we were taught to think about food as children stays with us until we intentionally work to unlearn it. And this brings us to the myth of moral purity in kind of Western Calvinist capitalism. Okay, here comes my rant part of the podcast. So let's zoom out even further. Why do we as a society place so much moral weight on food? The roots of this thinking run deep, tracing back to Western Calvinist influences that equate discipline, restraint, and hard work with moral virtue. In this framework, indulgence is seen as weakness, while self-denial is proof of righteousness. The idea didn't just shape religious doctrine, it became embedded in the capitalist mindset. Productivity, efficiency, and self-control became the highest virtues. The food industry and wellness culture have adopted these values, pushing the idea that eating clean is not just about health, but also about proving one's worth. If you have the discipline to eat the right way, you're strong, you're controlled, and morally superior. If you give in to cravings or eat foods labeled as bad, you are weak, undisciplined, and failing, not just in health, but as a person. Think about the language we use around food. Cheat meals, clean eating, guilt-free snacks. The implication is that eating in a way that deviates from an ideal is a moral failing. And in a society that thrives on productivity, even food is treated as a measure of self-discipline. The irony? The people who follow the strictest food rules, who work the hardest to control their intake, are often the ones struggling most with their relationship to food. And this gives us the illusion of control in this guilt-shame spiral. Right? One of the biggest traps in black and white thinking about food is the illusion of control. We are told that if we simply follow the rules perfectly, we can control our health, our weight, and even our worthiness. This belief is comforting in theory. It gives us a sense of order in a chaotic world. But in reality, food is just one of many factors that influence health. And our relationship with food is far more important than any single meal or macronutrient breakdown. The problem is that rigid control over food is an unsustainable strategy. It often starts as an attempt to be good or eat perfectly, but when perfection inevitably fails because life happens, cravings happen, emotions happen, people feel like they've lost control entirely. Instead of moderation, they swing to the opposite extreme, binging, guilt, and shame. The cycle repeats, reinforcing the false belief that stricter rules are needed next time. And then this becomes the classic binge-restrict cycle in action. The more we restrict, the more we crave. The more we crave, the more likely we are to eventually break the restriction. And when that happens, instead of simply eating the food and moving on, we feel like we've failed. That failure often leads to emotional distress, shame, guilt, disappointment, which then triggers more eating, not because of hunger, but as a way to cope with the emotional fallout. For many people, eating is not just about physical nourishment. It's about self-soothing. If food has been labeled as a source of comfort, but also as a source of guilt, it becomes an emotional battlefield. The harder we try to control it, the more it controls us. And this leads us to the Last Supper mentality, right? Another destructive side effect of black and white thinking about food is what's often called the Last Supper mentality. This is the mindset of, I'm starting over tomorrow, so I need to eat all the things I won't be allowed to have again. This is the direct result of a scarcity mindset around food. When we convince ourselves that certain foods are off limits, or that we'll have to be hyper-disciplined starting Monday, we create an urgency to overeat while we still can. This is why so many people struggle on Sunday nights before starting a new diet or go overboard before an upcoming challenge or weight loss plan. The belief that food will be restricted later makes it feel even more valuable now. And as a result, people consume far beyond their natural hunger. The irony? The more often people do this, the more extreme their cycles become. They restrict harder, which makes their cravings stronger. They binge bigger, which makes their guilt deeper, and the cycle continues. People trapped in this cycle often blame themselves. They think they lack willpower. They believe they are weak. But this has nothing to do with willpower and everything to do with psychology and physiology. You see, the human brain is wired to respond to scarcity with urgency. This is a survival mechanism. If something feels rare or forbidden, we naturally want it more. So when people talk about feeling out of control with food, what's actually happening is a predictable response to deprivation. It's not a personal failing. It's a direct outcome of the way the brain and nervous system are wired to perceive scarcity. Over time, these messages turn into rigid rules. Carbs become the enemy. Fats are dangerous. Processed food is poison. And the more we reinforce these ideas, the harder it becomes to eat anything without judgment. The irony, once again, the stricter our rules, the more likely we are to break them. If you tell yourself you can't have something, it suddenly becomes all you want. That's not just a lack of willpower, it's basic human psychology. When we feel deprived, our brain shifts into scarcity mode, making food feel like a limited resource. When we finally do it, the thing we've been forbidden ourselves, well, we go all in. Because who knows when we'll allow it again? This is what I call the forbidden fruit effect. If you notice, I'm using a lot of religious ideology in here because the morality thing plays like a religious text. So the more we make a food off limits, the more power it has over us. We build it up in our minds as something dangerous, something that should be avoided at all cost. But when we inevitably give in, because let's be real, nobody avoids sugar, fats, or carbs forever. We don't just eat it, we overeat it. Not because we're actually hungry for it, but because we've made it feel like a rare event. And when something feels rare, we want to get as much as possible of it while we still can. But here's where the real problem begins. Once we've eaten the so-called bad foods, we don't just experience physical fullness. We experience emotional guilt. We tell ourselves we failed. We tell ourselves we lack discipline. We tell ourselves we have no control. And what do we do when we feel ashamed? We seek comfort. And for most people struggling with emotional eating, comfort comes in the form of food. This is the binge-restrict cycle in action. The restriction sets us up to feel deprived. The deprivation makes us crave. The craving leads to overconsumption. The overconsumption leads to guilt. And the guilt leads us right back to restriction. Convinced the next time we will do better. And of course, let's talk about the role that stress plays in all of this. When we label a food bad, we don't just create mental stress, we create a physiological stress response. The body doesn't know the difference between an actual threat and a perceived one. So when you eat something you believe is bad for you, your nervous system reacts accordingly. Cortisol goes up. Stress levels rise. Your digestive system might even slow down, making you feel bloated and sluggish. Not because the food itself is inherently bad, but because your body is reacting to the stress of eating it. From a polyvagal perspective, this is a fascinating response. Our nervous system is designed to respond to danger. But in the modern world, that danger isn't a wild animal. It's a slice of cake. If we see food as a threat, we activate a fight or flight response. And ironically, when the nervous system is dysregulated like this, we're actually more likely to overeat because the body seeks comfort and regulation through food. So if this cycle is so predictable, why do we keep falling into it? Well, because the wellness industry has convinced us that rigid food rules are the answer. That if we just follow the right plan, avoid the right foods, and have enough discipline, we'll finally be free. That's a lie. Because true freedom doesn't come from avoiding bad foods. It comes from changing the way we think about food altogether. And that's what we're going to explore next. What actually matters when it comes to nutrition, and why food itself isn't inherently good or bad. It's all about context. So we've explored where black and white thinking about food comes from and how it fuels emotional eating. Now let's shift into the science. What actually matters when it comes to food and nutrition, and why context is everything. One of the biggest misconceptions in mainstream diet culture is the idea that foods are inherently good or bad. The truth is, nutrition is entirely context dependent. No single food can make or break your health, and no one meal determines your overall well-being. What matters is the overall pattern of your eating habits over time. Prime example of this is sugar. Sugar in fruit and sugar in soda are chemically identical. Both contain glucose and fructose. But in fruit, sugar comes packed with fiber, water, and micronutrients, which slow its absorption and impact on blood sugar. In soda, sugar is isolated, quickly absorbed, and is often consumed in excess without satiety. It's not the sugar itself that's inherently harmful, it's the context in which it's consumed. Same applies to fats and carbohydrates. Demonizing carbs ignores the vast differences between a fiber-rich sweet potato and a refined pastry. Likewise, labeling fats as bad doesn't account for the difference between anti-inflammatory omega-3s found in salmon and trans fats found in processed snacks. It's not just about what you eat, it's about how, when, and in what combination. Beyond biochemistry, our relationship with food is shaped by psychology, specifically motivation. Right? Self-determination theory outlines 3 essential psychological needs that drive behavior: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. When these needs are met, people are more likely to develop a balanced, healthy approach to eating. When they aren't, they fall into patterns, right? They're going to find patterns of control and rebellion and emotional distress around food. Now, autonomy is the need for choice and control. So rigid food rules violate autonomy by making people feel like they have to eat a certain way instead of choosing based on their own values and needs. When people feel forced into restrictive eating patterns, they often react with defiance, leading to rebellion, right? Guilt and then frustration. True autonomy in nutrition means recognizing that you can make food choices that align with your well-being without fear or external pressure. Now, competence is going to be the need for understanding and mastery. Right? Competence means having the knowledge and skills to make informed decisions around food. Many people struggle with food choices not because they lack discipline, but because they've been given conflicting and misleading information, Learning how to assess nutrition without falling into extremes, like understanding portion sizes, hunger cues, and emotional triggers, creates a sense of competence that makes balanced eating easier and more sustainable. A relatedness is the social and cultural role of food. Food is more than just food. It's connection, culture, and tradition. Rigid food beliefs can isolate people, making them feel anxious in social situations where forbidden foods are present. The fear of eating bad foods can lead to skipping meals with loved ones, obsessively bringing prepped meals to outings and events, or feeling shame when eating out. A true healthy relationship with food includes flexibility, being able to enjoy meals with others without guilt or anxiety. Food is not just processed in the digestive system, though. It's processed in the brain and nervous system as well. So when we attach this fear and anxiety to eating, we can create a physiological stress response that can impact digestion, cravings, and overall well-being. This stress response ends up with the fear of food increasing. So cortisol and cravings have a relationship. When you believe certain foods are dangerous or harmful, eating them can trigger that stress response that we talked about earlier. The body releases cortisol, the stress hormone, which can lead to increased cravings, fat storage, and even digestive discomfort. Ironically, the stress of eating a so-called bad food can often be more harmful than the food itself, right? Because of that mind-body connection that plays a huge role in how we process food, when we eat with guilt and fear, we're more likely to feel that bloating, fatigue, and cravings. From a polyvagal perspective, as we talked of earlier, the nervous system is constantly scanning for safety or danger. If we perceive food as a threat, whether due to past restriction, negative conditioning, or internalized food rules, it can activate that fight or flight response. This can make eating feel stressful rather than nourishing, leading to a hyperfixation on food, digestive issues, and increased emotional eating as a way to find a coping mechanism. Now, when food is no longer seen as a threat, the nervous system relaxes. Eating becomes a calm, intuitive process rather than a battle. The more we reduce fear around food, the more we can trust our bodies to regulate naturally. So, how do we move beyond this? Instead of asking, is this food good or bad? Start asking, how does this food serve me? Some foods nourish. Some foods provide comfort. Some foods are just enjoyable. None of these reasons are wrong. The goal, it's not perfection. It's a peaceful, sustainable relationship with food. And in the next section, we'll dive into exactly how to make that shift, how to break out of black and white thinking and start eating with more freedom, confidence, and balance. So this is the reframe and how to break free from good versus bad thinking. Now that we understand how black and white thinking about food develops and the science behind why it doesn't hold up, let's talk about how to shift your perspective. The goal isn't just to stop labeling foods as good or bad. It's to develop a new framework for thinking about food that allows for freedom, balance, and self-trust. This is where the Awaken Genius Blueprint comes in. The Awaken Genius Blueprint is about moving from external control to internal leadership. It's about shifting from rigid rules to a mindset that is flexible, intentional, and rooted in self-awareness. This happens through three key phrases: awareness, self-leadership, and integration. Hey there, it's Jeb. I want to take a quick moment to talk about something that might just change your life. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you're someone who's ready for something different. Maybe you've been feeling stuck in your relationship with food, your body, or even your sense of self. Maybe you've tried all the diets, read all the books, and still feel like something's missing. That's where Food on the Mind comes in. At Food on the Mind, we don't believe in one-size-fits-all solutions. Instead, we focus on helping you understand the deeper why behind your struggles and giving you the tools to create real, sustainable change, whether it's breaking free from emotional eating, building a healthier relationship with food, or recovering your confidence, we're here to guide you every step of the way. Working with me isn't about willpower or perfection. It's about curiosity, compassion, and transformation. Together, we'll dive into the practical tools and deeper insights that help you move forward, not just with food, but with life. And the best part, you don't have to figure it out on your own. With one-on-one coaching, group programs, and resources designed to fit your unique journey, Food on the Mind is here to help you step into your power and create a life that feels truly worth living. So if you're ready to take that first step, head over to my website at foodonthemind.com to learn more, or connect with me on social media, Jeb Stuart Johnston. I'd love to hear from you and how I can support your journey. Because at the end of the day, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to start. And I'm here to help you do exactly that. The awareness is recognizing your food rules and where they come from. And the first step is identifying these food beliefs that you've internalized. What rules do you follow without even questioning them? Where did they come from? Were they passed down from family? Were they picked up from diet culture? Are they rooted in a deeper fear of losing control? One of the most powerful exercises is simply writing down all the rules you hold about food. Then ask yourself, are these truly serving me? Are they keeping me trapped in cycles of guilt, stress, and rebellion? Awareness is what allows us to challenge old beliefs and decide which ones are actually useful. And then our self-leadership is making choices based on values, not fear. So once you have awareness, the next step is learning to make food choices that align with your values instead of external rules. This means shifting from reacting to food to choosing how you want to engage with it. For example, if your current mindset is, I can't have sugar because it's bad, a self-led approach would be, I choose to eat in a way that supports my energy and well-being, and sometimes that includes sugar. The difference is subtle but profound. One is restrictive, the other is autonomous. And then we need some integration, learning to view food as neutral and contextual. This final step in integrating this new perspective so that the food loses its moral weight. This doesn't mean ignoring nutrition, it means recognizing that food is contextual. A food's value depends on the situation, the need it's fulfilling, and the overall pattern of your eating habits. A donut isn't inherently bad. It might be a joyful indulgence with a friend, a nostalgic treat, or simply a quick source of energy. Instead of asking, is this bad? The more useful question is, what role does this food play for me right now? Beyond the Awaken Genius Blueprint, the strategic skills framework helps. It's kind of rooted in dialectical behavior therapy, and it helps us to create a mindset that can hold nuance rather than extremes. And here's how. Dialectical thinking is holding two truths at once. So one of the core concepts of DBT is dialectical thinking, the ability to hold two seemingly contradictory truths at the same time. So instead of thinking this food is unhealthy, so I should avoid it, try this food is the most nutrient-dense choice, but it can still be part of a balanced diet. Both can be true. You don't have to pick a side. There's also opposite action, choosing self-compassion over guilt, right? Opposite action is the practice of doing the opposite of what your habitual emotional response wants you to do. If you normally feel guilt after eating something off-plan, opposite action would be choosing self-compassion instead. If you eat a dessert and your instinct is to beat yourself up, try saying, I enjoyed that, and I don't need to punish myself for it. This may feel unnatural at first, but over time it rewires your default response to food choices. Next, we have radical acceptances, right? Food choices don't define your worth. Radical acceptance is about letting go of the idea that food choices have anything to do with morality or personal value. Eating a salad does not make you a better person. Eating a burger does not make you undisciplined. The moment you accept food is just food, not a test of your character, You'll remove the emotional charge that keeps you stuck in cycles of shame and rebellion. Many of these food struggles, though, aren't just about logic. They're about different parts of us that have conflicting needs. This is where my demon framework comes in. So inside of us, there's just different parts pulling us in different directions, right? Like, think about that thing when you say, well, part of me wants, another part of me wants, right? That's all it is. You might have a part that fears losing control and wants to restrict food. Another part craves pleasure and resists rules. Another part feels deep guilt whenever you eat something indulgent. None of these parts are bad. They all serve a function. The problem is that when they fight against each other, we get stuck in inner conflict. The restrictive part tries to take control, but the rebellious part fights back. The guilty part shames you, and the comfort-seeking part soothes with more food. The key isn't to get rid of these parts, it's to integrate them so they work together. Instead of treating the craving part like an enemy, listen to what it needs. Is it asking for comfort, freedom, joy? Instead of letting the restrictive part take over, ask what it's trying to protect you from. Often, restriction is a way of coping with deeper fears of unworthiness or lack of control. When you recognize that these inner conflicts are part of you, not all of you, you gain the ability to lead them rather than to be ruled by them. You shift from internal war to internal harmony. At the end of the day, food is just a tool. It serves different functions in different situations. Instead of labeling food as good or bad, ask yourself, am I eating this for nourishment? Great. Am I eating this for comfort? That's valid too. Am I eating this for pleasure? Also, okay. The goal isn't to eliminate emotional eating entirely. It's to be conscious about when and why you're eating without guilt or shame. So next time you find yourself labeling a food as bad, try this. Replace I shouldn't eat this with, is this a choice I want to make right now? The difference is subtle but powerful. One comes from a place of restriction, the other from a place of self-leadership. The goal of this entire process is not perfection, it's flexibility. It's learning to trust yourself with food, to make choices from a place of clarity instead of fear, and to recognize that there is no single right way to eat. When you release the need to be good with food, you also release the shame of being bad. And that's where the real freedom begins. In the next section, we'll go even deeper into practical strategies for shifting your mindset and creating a sustainable, healthy relationship with food. Understanding the theory behind food freedom is powerful, but without practical application, it's easy to slip into bad habits, or rather old habits. So let's get into the concrete steps you can take to shift your mindset and build a sustainable, flexible relationship with food. These steps aren't about forcing change overnight. They're about gradually rewiring your approach to food so that you can break free from guilt, restriction, and cycles of emotional eating. Step one is to identify your food rules. You can't change what you're not aware of. The first step in breaking free from black and white thinking is recognizing the food rules you've internalized. These are the rules that dictate what you should or shouldn't eat, often without question. Here's your journaling prompt. I want you to take a few minutes and write down all the foods you consider bad or off limits. Then, next to each one, write why you believe that. Did you hear that from a parent, a diet book, social media, your own past experiences? The goal here isn't to judge yourself. It's to see where these beliefs came from so you can begin to question them. Once you have your list, go through and ask, is this belief helping me or is it keeping me stuck in food anxiety? Many times we hold on to food rules out of fear, not because they actually support our health or well-being. Step two, reframe choices using dialectical thinking. Again, dialectical thinking is the ability to hold two truths at once. It's about moving away from extremes and finding balance. Instead of seeing food as good or bad, we can recognize that food exists on a spectrum. And different choices serve different needs. So here's your thought swap exercise. Instead of, I can't eat this because it's unhealthy, try, this food isn't the most nutrient-dense choice, but I can still enjoy it in a balanced way. Instead of, I was bad for eating that, try, I ate in a way that didn't feel great, but I can just adjust without guilt. Instead of, I have no control around sugar, try, I'm learning how to eat sweet without fear or urgency. By practicing these shifts in thinking, you train your brain to see food more neutrally. Over time, this reduces stress and removes the all-or-nothing approach that fuels emotional eating. Step 3 is to regulate the nervous system before making food decisions. So if you're making food choices from a place of stress, urgency, or emotional distress, your nervous system is likely dysregulated. This makes it harder to make balanced decisions because your body is in fight or flight mode, driving cravings and impulsivity. A simple but effective way to counteract this is grounding yourself before eating. Quick breath work technique, box breathing. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. Repeat 3 to 5 times before a meal. Or some 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding. Name 5 things you see, 4 things you feel, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you taste. This shifts focus away from anxiety to the present moment. By calming the nervous system before eating, you allow yourself to make choices from a place of clarity rather than reactivity. Step 4 is going to practice neutrality with food language. Words shape beliefs. If you constantly describe food in moral terms, cheat meal, guilt-free, bad choices, you reinforce a mindset that ties self-worth to what you eat. Practicing neutrality in food language is a simple but powerful shift. So our reframing language is, instead of I was bad this weekend, try I ate differently than usual. It's okay. Instead of I have to earn my food, try I fuel my body based on what it needs. Instead of this food is clean and that food is junk, try this food is more nutrient dense, but all food has a place. The small change removes the emotional charge from food, making it easier to eat in a balanced way without guilt. Step 5 is to focus on sustainability over perfection. Finally, the most important shift is embracing the big picture. So instead of striving for perfect eating, focus on consistency over time. One meal, one day, or even 1 week won't make or break your health. We think about that 80-20 principle, right? The practical approach to eating is aiming for 80% nutrient-dense whole foods that support health and energy, while allowing 20% for flexibility, enjoyment, and real life. So instead of restriction, think about addition. What can you add to your meals that will make them more nourishing? Is that more protein, more fiber, more variety? When you shift from what do I need to avoid to what can I include, you move from a deprivation mindset to an abundance mindset. Listen, breaking free from food obsession isn't about willpower. It's about changing the way you relate to food. These 5 steps can create a practical roadmap to get there. 1. Identify your food rules and question where they came from. 2. Use dialectical thinking to break out of good versus bad mindset. 3. Regulate your nervous system before making food decisions. 4. Practice food neutrality with food language to remove guilt and judgment. And 5. Focus on sustainability by aiming for long-term balance instead of short-term perfection. If you take nothing else from this, remember, your relationship with food is more important than any individual food choice. When you shift from control and fear to self-trust and balance, you find the freedom that rigid diets will never give you. So in this final section, we're going to wrap up with key takeaways and next steps so you can take this and put it into action. So we've covered a lot in this episode. So let's bring it all together. First, Food isn't good or bad. It's all about context. What matters isn't a single meal, but your overall habits, mindset, and relationship with food. When we let go of rigid food rules, when we open the door to a more sustainable, enjoyable way of eating. Second, black and white thinking fuels emotional eating and guilt. The cycle of restriction and rebellion is driven by the belief that we must be perfect with food. Perfection isn't the goal. Flexibility is. When we remove the labels and stop moralizing food, we free ourselves from unnecessary stress and self-judgment. And finally, shifting to a flexible mindset allows for freedom without losing control. True self-leadership with food means making intentional choices based on what serves you, not based on food or fear or outdated rules. When you trust yourself, you don't have to fight food anymore. You get to experience it with balance, clarity, and confidence. If this resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on your food beliefs this week. What is one small shift you can make today to move toward a more peaceful relationship with food? Maybe it's questioning a long-held food rule. Maybe it's practicing neutral language around food. Maybe it's simply pausing before making a food decision to check in with yourself. Whatever it is, know that each small step creates momentum for lasting change. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need to hear this message. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, or connect with me on social media. It helps more than you know. And if you're looking for deeper guidance on breaking free from food obsession, check out my mini course. This is exactly what I help people work through. So if you're ready for real change, I'd love to support you. The awakening isn't a single moment. It's a lifelong practice. Awaken yourself. Awaken your genius. Awaken your power. Walk your path with intention, and I'll meet you along the way.